Hello, 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 everybody. Dave Schmitto joining you tonight with the amazing, the incredible, the phenomenal moderator of all moderators, Elisabeth Bostwick, that joined us tonight for the final Teach Better chat. That's right. Tonight we had an amazing conversation all about engagement, connections, relationships, truly all things that matter. And in just a few minutes, the two of us, we're going to sit back, recap the chat that we just had, the amazing questions, the phenomenal answers that you, the viewers, the listeners, the Twitterers, I don't even know what the right word is to say, the Twitters, Elisabeth, feel free to correct me on that when we come back. Tell me what we call the people that were engaged in a Twitter chat, and we're just going to unpack it all. Talk about the conversations that we just had and all the things that we might have missed in the half hour that was. So go gather your friends, go grab a cocktail, grab your phones, go back, review the chat. In about 45 seconds or so, we're going to come back and unpack the final Teach Better chat. We'll see you soon. All right. Well, Elisabeth, I don't know if you saw it in the comments or not, but Jeff Garga says, yes, the people that participate in the chat, we are calling them Twitterers. So Twitterers, Facebookers, YouTubers, Twitchers, wherever you're watching us tonight, thanks for hanging out and sitting around your computer, sitting around your phone, sitting around your TV, and hanging out with us tonight for the last half hour of the Teach Better chat recap. Elisabeth, thanks for hanging out tonight. Thanks for hosting. Thanks for leading. Thanks for doing all the things that you did tonight. You've been super, super busy. So thanks for hanging out.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me here. And yeah, I was so surprised to see that Teach Better email come through my email today. And then I saw it was the last chat for Teach Better. And I'm like, what? So, but I know there's so many other opportunities to engage with Teach Better. And that's what's so wonderful. You guys do such an amazing job of just providing so many resources and materials and, everything that people can engage with. So that's awesome.
Well, the goal is simply to amplify voices, just to bring people around and amplify the voices of educators, of leaders, of just amazing individuals like you, giving people an opportunity to express their platform, their beliefs, their thoughts, their pedagogy, all of the things that matter most to change the lives of kids. And we had the opportunity to connect with you tonight for the final chat. We had you engaging with us. So thank you so much for saying yes, for agreeing to have this conversation. But people that might have just been engaging with the chat tonight, following along in the hashtag, that might be new to this whole community and new to the chat scene, might not necessarily know you yet. Can you just take 30, 45 seconds, introduce yourself to the world and let them know who you are, and then we'll start unpacking the chat a little bit.
Sure thing. So I'm Elisabeth Bostwick. You can call me Liz. I'm an educator. I have taught in the classroom for 16 years. I work as an instructional coach, and I also am a speaker, consultant. I do keynote speaking, and I've written a book. So I'm an author, and I've co-authored books as well. So my main book is Take the Leap, Ignite a Culture of Innovation. And it's all about helping kids and really teachers create a luminous culture so that we can empower our students, create authentic learning opportunities so that we can all reach our full potential. So I'm excited to be here with you, Dave, and just honored that I squeezed in for this last episode.
Yeah, I'm super excited. You're somebody that I've been connected with for a while, and I completely admire. And I follow literally your every word. When you're tweeting it, when you're posting it, when you're whatever it is that you're doing online, I am following it because I think that you are just filled with so much passion, so much wisdom, so much truth. And you say the things that need to be said in this way that is just so uplifting and inspiring. And tonight is a prime example of that. Tonight, you decided to bring to the surface a conversation that I think a lot of people are having. A lot of people are talking through the need to have relationships, the focus on engagement, to focus on the stuff that matters most. But why did you decide to make this the focus of your conversation tonight?
Well, really, the topic is of great importance to me. Creating ultimately a culture where every learner thrives is really what I think as educators we've set out to do. I think it's really at the heart of most of us when we talk about our why. I think it all boils down to we wanted to help humans, children of all ages, thrive in life and reach their full potential. I think especially given the last couple of years where we've all been in such tumultuous times, it's really an important time to really, we all talk about social emotional learning, so we know that the competencies of SEL are critical. There's something that we all need to hone in on, but ultimately we want to be helping our teachers too know, in addition to social emotional learning, how do we really help our kids thrive? And so we need that foundation of connections and relationships, but we also need to go into our pedagogy and really think about, well, how do we get our kids curious? How do we get them excited and motivated to learn? How do we get them inspired on topics so that they want to come back into school?
Okay, so we're gonna geek out a little bit here because
Yeah.
I'm loving what you're saying right now. A lot of people are out there preaching about relationships and say that we need to have relationships, we need to have connections with kids. But I love how you just made that connection and explained why. It's beyond just making sure that kids feel good and that you feel good and that you remember your why in teaching. It is so that you can ... And there's a big ellipsis here.
Yeah.
Can you go back and explain that again? I just want to make sure that people are understanding and hearing what you just said. Why do we need to have relationships in our classroom? Why do they matter?
Yeah. So, within my book too, Luminous Culture is the L for leap, and it's all about the foundation. We need those relationships, true relationships, genuine, authentic feeling relationships with our students so that they can be those thoughtful risk takers, so that they can push the boundaries of learning, so that they want to go deeper and ask questions and be curious. Ultimately, we want the kids to leave our classroom knowing some of their interests, possibly even developing some passions over the year. So that to me is at the heart of teaching. And so when we're looking at kids thriving, yes, it's about relationships. Without those relationships, we can't get to that next step. So it's the foundation to everything that we do, but that's where the connection exists.
So powerful, so powerful. And as a mom to teenagers, you understand this and you can relate to this in a way that maybe some others can't. A father of 4 kids here, so I get what you're saying. I try my best to have amazing relationships with my kids, knowing full well that they're not going to be kids forever, knowing full well that my job as a parent is to get my kids to the place where they can go out there and they can thrive without me, where they can be curious, where they can be inspired, where they can go out there and change the world without dad necessarily needing to stand right beside them. And I know it's terrifying to think through that thought with your own kids, but that's what I'm hearing you say. You have amazing relationships and connections with your own kids, let alone classrooms full of kids, so that eventually they'll reach out to you and ask for your help. They'll ask for your support. They'll ask for your feedback. They'll know that you always have their back when they're taking these big chances and going out there and ruling the world. So I love that. I love it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And I love the connection you made to just being a parent too. And it's so true. If we want our own children to go out and take risks and be successful, we need to have those relationships, but they need to know that we're their cheerleaders and supporters at the same time, and to challenge them right in life.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So good. And we've got some people in the comments here that are relating to exactly what you're saying. Erica saying, love it. If we care and they care, they try. Brad Hughes, the amazing Brad Hughes, says he loves your use of the word thrive, and comparing that to a lot of us when we say, I want kids to succeed, and you're saying, I want them to thrive, which there's a difference there, which is so cool. And maybe we'll unpack that a little bit as we go here, but I want to jump into the chat. The Teach Better Chat's an opportunity for people to engage with you. You ask some very good, I'm going to even say provocative questions, some questions that make people think. The way that I love the way that you build your questions. They're not questions where people can necessarily just sit down and say, I've got 280 characters. I'm just going to pump out. I know exactly what I'm going to say. You got to pause for a second. You have to unpack some things. You have to reflect first before you create something. I absolutely love it. And you built this amazing conversation tonight, all about the need for relationships and engagement so that kids can ultimately thrive. As you're thinking through the questions that were asked, and again, I know it's a whirlwind. It's 30 minutes of just your thumbs are exhausted, you're cramping up in your hands, you don't necessarily, you can't keep up. But as you're thinking through the questions that were asked, did you have a favorite question that you asked the Twitterers that we're calling them?
Twitterers. Let's see. My questions. I would have to say that if I look back at them, I really like question number 3, which was learning ought to be deeply engaging, shifting toward empowered learning, and how might sparking curiosity, inspiring creativity, and promoting student agency help us create a culture where every learner thrives. So we talked about the importance of relationships and connections. We want those connections there, and that it's more powerful than just jumping right to the content. You have to have those connections before content. However, once those relationships are formed, and we never stop forming those relationships, they need to be cultivated day in and day out. But we also want to shift into how do we deeply engage our learners and empower them in the classroom.
Oh, so let me just, I'm going to compliment you a little bit. Not only do you ask us amazing questions, the way that you even create that one question, like that one question is a work of art. So Twitterers out there, if you are going to be leading Twitter chats at some point in the future, if you're going to be trying to engage people in a conversation, I want you to go back and look at Q3. I'm pointing over here to like my other monitors so people can see it. Q3 that you just described it's a brilliant question. It's a brilliant question because it's 2 sentences, and it's 2 sentences. I want to make sure it wasn't 3. It's 2 sentences where you build this argument and then pose a question. You set the stage and you make a declarative fact. Learning ought to be deeply engaging. I could even just leave it at that. I mean, you make this mic drop moment where you say, this is what it needs to be. It's not a question. You didn't say, should learning be engaging? No, learning ought to be deeply engaging. And then you go on to define what that means, shifting towards empowered learning. So engaging doesn't necessarily mean that you're just doing cartwheels and handstands and things in front of the class. It's to get kids so that they are empowered. Fact. And then you ask a question about that. So I'm going to unrewind that one question, your favorite question, if you will. When you say it ought to be engaging, what do you mean by that?
Well, I think I know when I say like deeply engaging and it ought to be deeply engaging, it needs to be something that kids are interested in. So we're going beyond something that just feels fun and enjoyable, but really something that like piques their interest. So I worked a lot with project-based learning where we would have a launch activity, for example. And it doesn't have to be PBL. So I know that sometimes people, the minute they hear like, oh, well, I'm not doing project-based learning. So it no matter what, in your classroom, you can have any kind of introduction. You can have some kind of hands-on experiment. You could even use a clip of a video to pique curiosity and then build off that. So to me, it's even giving kids materials and letting them explore and ask questions about those materials before beginning with something. So when I'm talking about engaging, that's how I'm referring to it. I want learning to feel authentic and meaningful. I want our kids to be able to engage with what it is that they do in the classroom and make connections to our community outside of the classroom too. And I know that throughout my years of teaching, there's a couple of times where I've had students that you could tell would get really emotional with a topic. And that's where I would say that's where their heart is connecting to a topic. That means they're leading their minds towards this is something I'm passionate about. So to me, that's when we're looking at engagement, deepening engagement, and then developing a passion in our kids. And when we do that, then that's when that empowerment begins to take over too.
I love that. And I'm going to unpack that a little bit as I throw a comment on the screen that at first it's going to seem like it's completely random. It means absolutely nothing. Somebody wrote, we need relationships like Dave and Jeff have. So people that Twitterers, Facebookers, Jeff Gargas and I have this relationship where, we sit around, we sip a little bourbon from time to time. We have some cocktails together. But also we have this tremendous respect for each other where we know that we at times see the world differently. We see the world differently, and we can critically engage in some conversations with each other, some debate. We push back on each other. We provide each other some feedback. What you just explained to me, what you just said in your last answer, I think is powerful. We need to have these relationships with the kids to empower them to amplify their own passions, to take the world by its own reins, not to follow our lead, not to say, do what I do, say what I say, believe what I believe, ignite my passions within you. don't live vicariously through our kids, but to ignite their own passions. So, Liz, we've got teachers right now that are checking us out that are already in school. We've got some that are getting ready to go back to school, some that are a couple of weeks away from going to school. Explain to them in the beginning of the school year here, what is the essential relationship that we need to be establishing with kids? Do we need to be friends with them? Do we just need to get to know them? Do we need to do true colors and get to know you activities and figure out what their pet's name is? Like, when you say build a relationship with a kid to ignite their passion, what does that actually look like?
Yeah, that kind of sounds like a loaded concept, doesn't it? If you're just hearing that, especially if you're a newer teacher or, you're hearing that for the first time. So, every year it's like, I felt like I was going to say I'd leave my class. I don't leave my class, but my class would leave me. And it's like, I'd get this whole new group of students and it's like starting all over again. From point A. So it is really about welcoming kids, getting to know them, making sure that we're pronouncing their names accurately, knowing their names, making sure that they know one another in the classroom. But it is also about setting the stage and creating the culture in the classroom so that students can share their questions, their ideas, their misconceptions in a safe way. And that doesn't come easily. Honestly, like I think back in my classroom experience, I think that sometimes we wouldn't even get to the point where all kids would feel comfortable sharing things. And again, I'm talking fourth graders, so it's going to vary. And it's also going to be dependent on where you are, what your students, teacher, everything. But it takes time. I think sometimes it would take me two good solid months, if not 3 months, to really get to where I felt like the kids could take more ownership. It's not to say they wouldn't do any of that initially, but it takes time so that it becomes more routine to them, is what I would say. So in the beginning of the year, it was all about creating conversation. We did a lot of accountable talk. So we would use sentence stems. I was really big on having the kids engage in genuine conversations. So oftentimes sometimes teachers will use a turn and talk, but I've watched kids in the classroom turn and talk at each other, over each other, not even know what the other person said. So it's taking time in the beginning of the year, even though it might feel like it's taking much longer than you want it to, it's taking time to make sure it's done well. There's no point in rushing through some of those things because you'll never get to the point of being able to go as deep as you want to if some of those systems and routines aren't well oiled, if you will. So for me, it was about setting those routines early on, helping the kids develop the expectations, but I also involved them in it. And it wasn't just me, it was my whole team. So I want to make sure I don't take all the credit for that. The whole team I taught with, we would sit down with our own classroom of students and we would say, what do we want our classroom to look like, feel like, sound like? We would let the kids have ownership. They would develop the classroom expectations. So they were shared. And right off the bat, our students had ownership. And again, you could even say like, hey, this isn't just my classroom. This is all of our classroom, right? We all have ownership. So what are some things you think you could do that you could take ownership of? How do you want to lead in this classroom? And you'll always have a handful of kids that you might find right off the bat that there's certain jobs that they might want to do. And I know a lot of teachers will have classroom jobs, but when we have our kids take natural leadership roles too, then we'll see that before you know it, your job as the teacher runs more smoothly. And Ray hit on something with that too. Ray had mentioned that when we empower our students as leaders in the classroom, it allows the teacher to better facilitate and have more opportunities to connect with our students. So sometimes as educators, if we feel like we don't really have time to have these conversations and connect with our kids, well, then it needs to go back to the foundation. What are our routines? What have we set up for our students to be successful and to really thrive in the role that they're in? So those are the things that we're looking at. Does that answer your question, Dave? I don't know if I
and then some. Yes, okay. That was it. I mean, we have a lot of educators out there, and I love that you address the new educators in the room, as well as the veterans who are hearing this need to cultivate relationships. And we have a lot of talk right now about SEL. There's a lot of talk right now about learning gaps, which we're not going to go into that right now because that's not the focus of our conversation. We've also heard for the last 10 years the term engagement and how important that is. Mm-hmm. And I feel like you're bringing all of those worlds together. You're reminding us why we need to have a focus on all of these things and why these things are so essential, not just so that we can better our scores and better the outcomes and focus on student lasting learning, but really focusing on people as people. And children, whether they're in fourth grade or 10th grade, whatever grade they're in, are people and valuing people. And when you were just talking right now, I'm going to be very honest with you, Liz. I was thinking through the lens of when I was a former principal, how amazing it would have been if I had grade level teams of teachers that thought of relationships and engagement in the way that you just described it amongst each other, let alone with the kids. Just having this mutual respect for each other, having conversation with each other and saying, what do you need in order to thrive? How can I better engage with you? How can I foster your skill set? It is so amazingly powerful to think if it's good enough for us, and if it's a desire that we have as adults to feel seen, to feel noticed, to feel appreciated for our strengths, not just our deficits, how much more important is it for our more vulnerable kids in our classrooms? I mean, wow, you're just hitting me in so many places right now. I love it.
Yeah, I love how you mentioned that about staff and just the colleagues and having that type of environment. And something else you just said, you talked about it doesn't matter what age you're in. And I just wanted to kind of follow up on that because, I think that it happens naturally in a lot of elementary classrooms. And I think we had somebody in our Twitter chat tonight who kind of hit on that topic where, he felt like an elementary, and this isn't like an elementary versus secondary. It's not about that because there are people obviously that do an amazing job in all areas. But I think that sometimes it's easy to think, okay, well, these kids are middle school or high school. They don't need this fluff. Somebody might call it fluff or something, but relationships and connections aren't fluff. And in fact, our middle school and high schoolers are looking even more for that sense of belonging. Like they need to feel like they're seen, they're heard, they have acceptance. And if they don't find that acceptance there, they're going to find it elsewhere where you might not want them to. So I just think it's really critical that we hit that with the middle school and high school too, because just being a parent of two high schoolers, my oldest is a senior, which blows my mind, but they need it just as much, if not more in a lot of ways.
Oh, you're preaching to me right now with my oldest is a sophomore in high school. So I'm just gonna say you're older than me. Just because your kid is older than me, you are definitely older than me. No, I'm just kidding. But I have a sophomore in high school, and I know that my sophomore does not tell me everything. Most days when I'm trying to have a conversation with him, I hear grunts, I hear sighs, I see eyes rolling. He's not engaging with me. So right. Educators, teachers, especially if you're teaching my kid, know that I need you. Know that he might open up to you in a way that he won't open up with me. He might have a conversation with you that he won't have with me. He might just listen to you in a way he won't listen to dear old dad. So please accept that responsibility. Accept the fact that kids will listen to you in a way that they might not listen to other people. Embrace that responsibility because truly you are destiny shapers. You're destiny changers in a way that parents can't always be alone. So if any of my own kids, teachers are listening to this, please help. I need all the help I can get.
Yeah, and I will second that as well. And as a parent too, as much as I obviously care about their education and their growth, who they develop into as humans and just being kind and knowing how to decipher information and how they treat others and the empathy they have to me is far more powerful than a class and the content that they consume. So yeah, I think that's just a great point to just hit on.
Oh, it's so good. So Liz, let's give people some practical tips here. You asked people very specific questions for activities and strategies that they can utilize to help foster some of this in their own classrooms. Were there any responses that resonated with you or any just helpful tips that you have for others as they're walking into classrooms, maybe for the first time or the first time in a long time, to build some of these relationships that really engage kids?
Well, we always talk about greeting kids at the door. We've seen, lots of videos of people creating handshakes and all of that. I'm a believer in greeting my kids, saying their name, asking about them. I try to avoid things of saying like, how was your weekend? Or tell me about your night at home. And I really try to frame the question more towards what do you look forward to today? Because we don't really know what the kids are coming into us with. We don't know what they experienced at home or what happened over the weekend. So framing it in terms of like, well, what are you looking forward to here? Or who do you want to go chat with? Or what do you want to work with or work on in the classroom? Because in my classroom, we used to have some choice time in the morning. So that's why that came up with the choice. And it's just a really good way to start the day, is being able to give kids some choice if the schedule allows for it, but also greeting them at the door. We would also start with circle time, even with the older kids. And I've even seen middle and school and high school teachers using a form of circle time, but not calling it that, but having conversation time where people can just connect. And I think that's really valuable, having time to talk and connect. I think that, I'm trying to think what else I saw somebody had shared something else about, I'm trying to look back. I'm probably not going to find it now, but just about the importance of making sure every voice is heard as well.
Yep.
And I think that's important. So
Oh.
sorry, I was looking back for just a second because I thought I had it here and it moved on my tweet deck.
Well, there are a lot of those about voice. I'm looking
Yes.
at one right now where Teresa Engler said, "When I'm learning, I always feel my best when I'm given a choice and a voice. I also excel when I feel valued in the class, as though my teacher is happy to have me there and happy to have the contributions I make to class." Liz, I was at a meeting yesterday, higher ed. So I was working with a bunch of college professors, and people were sharing their stories of these impactful moments in their school experience. And it was powerful to hear these adults, these educators that have been living in the world of education for decades now, reflecting back on these experiences when other adults made them feel valued, when they made them feel noticed, recognizing the differences and the uniquenesses that were them, and celebrating them and not dismissing them as weird or quirky or different. Just saying, I love how unique you are. I love how you were made. I love the passion that you bring, and building people up, because it truly does change a destiny. People will live into the labels that other people assign them. And I love that you're giving us that challenge to really figure out who people are and to celebrate it. So good. So good.
Thank you. Well, and it was Laura McDonald in the chat. She said,
Oh, yeah.
I want them to remember I believed in them. They're worth it.
Mm.
That to me, I think that is so powerful. Like ultimately, like I think sometimes it's really easy. And I've been there as a classroom teacher. So I understand, like we can get so bogged down with all of the content, the curriculum, everything we feel like we have to get through, that we feel like, okay, we don't have time for this team building, or we don't have time to have conversations, or I can't greet the kids at the door. But it's like, if you don't do all of those fundamental pieces, you can't get to where you really need to take your students. And at the end of the day, I, like Laura, I want students to remember that somebody believed in them, and that they're worth it. Like that was such an incredible statement right there too. And there was somebody else, which that's the one I couldn't find too, and somebody else who had said something along the lines of they had a teacher who inspired them to be a teacher. And we might inspire our students. Maybe we won't inspire them to be a teacher, but we might be the person that helps them find their true calling in life. So I just think our profession has so many different opportunities to make such a great impact.
Oh, and Liz, I kind of want to just leave it right there, because you are making a tremendous impact. I want all the educators out there around the country, around the world, that are watching this right now, that are listening, whether it's now or later on, to really listen to this conversation as though you are the student and Liz, you are the teacher, and you are giving us permission to go out there and live our passions, to live in this purpose that you just articulated for us. You gave us permission to connect with kids. You gave us permission to focus on changing lives, to change individuals, to focus on each and not every, to focus on the kid and not necessarily just the content. So I want to leave it right there, because I think you truly, when we talk about learning loss, that thing I said we're not going to talk about, what we lost out on is we lost out on those connections. We all know teachers matter more than anything. And if we lost out on anything, we lost out on kids having that connection with their teacher in a very real way over the last 18, 19 months, however long it's been. So I'm going to just hold on to this, that you just gave us permission to be those educators that are changing lives and inspiring kids to truly be kids, and to be any kind of kid that they are at every age that they are. And adults, you have that same permission as well. Focus on your own strengths, your own abilities, your own passions, and go change the world. Liz, do you have anything else that you want to make sure that people understand and recognize and take away from this chat tonight before they go and start changing the world?
I do. I have one more piece, and it's something that came up in the chat that I had shared and other people had shared too. And when we talk about this topic, when we're feeling like the weight of everything on our shoulders as teachers, whether you're inside the classroom or outside, just let's remember that we need to take time ourselves, right? Like if we as educators are not our best self, we can't best serve others. Like we have to be in a place where we're thriving so that our students can thrive. So if it means taking 5 minutes each day and just having some quiet and putting on some meditative like music in the classroom and having kids do some gratitude journaling, or just being able to share what brings them joy, like giving them some time to like kind of chew on that and just think what really brings you joy, not just video games, like where do you really truly feel joy in your life? And then I think that we're going to be able to all come together better and have a more peaceful, productive school year.
So good. So good. So, Liz, as people are sitting here right now in complete gratitude that you led the final Teach Better chat, again, tears are rolling down my face right now if you can't see me, people. As people are sitting in that gratitude and just the appreciation of getting to be in your presence for the last hour or so, can you just remind them how to connect with you if they want to continue on the journey with you over the next coming year plus?
Sure thing. And I love to connect with people. So if there's anything that comes up, you have a question about something we talked about, you want a more solid example, please feel free to reach out to me. I am always happy to connect with people and share resources that I have, or at least be able to point you in the right direction. So yeah, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, just about anywhere. So you can find me on the social media, and it's at Elisabeth Bostwick, even though my name's Elisabeth, it's just half my first name and my full last name. So there you have it. I can drop it in the chat later.
Perfect. So people, I promise you, connect with her and you'll be inspired, you'll be empowered, and you'll be changed. So do it. Liz, thank you so much for hanging out with us again. Twitter-ers, Facebook-ers, Teach Better family. Thanks for enjoying us on this ride as Teach Better goes to sleep for a little while, at least in the Twitter sphere on our chat. Jeff Gargas and Ray Hewitt joked that I need to create a raft and push it out to the sea and shoot flaming arrows at it as Teach Better chat goes out to slumber. But it's just a rest. It's a nap. We're taking a pause for a little while, but we encourage you, continue to connect. Join Ray and company for the daily drop-in the morning. Join us for Brain Break in the evenings. Join us anywhere that you see us. Continue to connect. Continue to engage. Liz, thank you so much for being here and sending us off on such an epic note. I appreciate you.
Thank you.